5:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Community Improvement Corporation to order. Mr. Mills, I wonder if you could come up and take minutes for us. And then I would ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And at this point, we don't have officers, but I'm going to go ahead and ask Jeff to go through the discussion of the bylaws and membership first.
Thank you, Mr. Unger, Mr. Wallert. Good evening.
I think I need to call roll first. Mr. Wallert.
Present.
Mr. Rajagopal. Mr. Unger, here. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Good evening. The first item on the agenda is a discussion of the C.I.C. bylaws and membership. The board, as it exists tonight, consists of three people, Mr. Wallert, Mr. Unger, and Mr. Rajagopal. The Code of Regulations is acts that was included in the townships, or in the agenda packet, acts as the bylaws for this organization. And so I just wanted to take a second to go through, because Mr. Wallert, you're new to the board, how the membership works and answer any questions that you have. So the board of the C.I.C. is made up of two different types of what they call trustees. You can think of them as board of directors, but in the bylaws they call them trustees, and there's two types of trustees. The first type are what they call township trustees, and that is the three elected township trustees of the township. They are by virtue of these bylaws trustees on the C.I.C. The second group is all other members who are not appointed or elected public officials of Hamilton County or Colerain Township. Each trustee in the second group shall hold office until the next election of trustees and until such trustee's successor is elected or until the trustee's earlier resignation. What that means is every 2 years the board resets. And the Board of Township Trustees has the opportunity then to recreate the board because what the C.I.C. is really an economic development tool for the township. So the C.I.C. is supposed to be executing the economic development policy of the Board of Township Trustees. And so as that Board of Township Trustees changes, you guys get the opportunity to reform your C.I.C. board. And so you can have just three members of the Board of Trustees, or if you'd like to expand that membership, you can do that. In the past, since the inception, pretty much, we've always had the three township trustees. We've had three appointed officials that work for Colerain Township. Typically, it's the finance director who serves as the treasurer of the C.I.C. It's the planning director who serves as the secretary of the C.I.C. and usually the economic development director who serves as the executive director of the C.I.C. And so those titles are called officers. And so first thing that needs to happen, if you want more than three members on this board, the first thing that you would do is appoint the sort of township employees that are going to do the work for you guys. Specifically the finance director, planning director, and economic development director. And then you would give them offices like executive director of the C.I.C., treasurer, and secretary. You guys also need to figure out who's going to be the president of the board and the vice president of the board. The president of the board and the vice president of the board both have to be township trustees. So nobody else can be the president of the board except for one of the three of you. Nobody else can be the vice president of the board except for one of the three of you. So those are things that at the annual meeting, which is what this is, at the organizational meeting, which is what this is, those are things that are typically done. And that, I hope that I clearly conveyed the membership.
I think so, and I'd like to welcome Matt to the C.I.C. That was part of the job of being elected trustee. I know that in the 2018-2019 board, former trustee Insko and Raj had mentioned if they were even interested in continuing the organization. So I certainly am. I think it's a great tool, but I think it'd be fair to ask Matt if he's sees value in having the organization and would like to continue it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the CIC is probably one of the most effective tools at any level, especially the township. It's been used at city levels as well for economic development. It gives a little bit of flexibility in when you're taking care of problem properties. That you don't have to resort to highest bidder. You can resort to best bidder. So, for example, if a piece of land is sold at a tax sale or is sold by the Port Authority, the CIC can purchase that and is not limited to the highest bidder. So we could sell it to the neighbor if we want, for instance. And I know that that's a tool that's been effectively used in a lot of communities in order to get rid of blighted properties. And to me, that's, I think, an important part of this vehicle. I think the CIC, look at Cincinnati and Hamilton County and 3CDC and places like that have been able to develop some pretty large areas based upon this vehicle. So I'm fully in support of it. I'd like to see it take I'd actually like to see it take a more active role and have it kind of one of the signature programs of the township. It's kind of, in my view, it's covered with a little bit of mystery. What is the CIC? What does it do? And I think that part of our charge is to do probably a little better job of communicating what they do and getting that out to the public and indicating those boundaries even for ourselves as a board. So that's a really long answer to yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I agree, and I think it'll be good, and it sounds like Matt's enthusiastic, and so I guess it sounds like the majority of the board wants to continue the organization, and I don't doubt that Raj would too. I know Greg and Raj had some questions, but anyway, so I guess at that point, should we call for election of officers?
I think that makes sense. I think probably the first order of business would be to appoint trustees, the Group 2 trustees, and then assign and then vote on officerships after that.
If they do that first, those guys would be supposed to vote that. If they vote on the officers first, then those guys don't vote. If you just appoint those guys.
I'm sorry, I missed that point. I didn't.
I was just telling Jeff that if you appointed the additional members, then we might need to get them here to vote
Right.
for the officers, whereas if you guys vote on the officers
Right.
first, then you could appoint the additional members.
Or we could correspondingly appoint, if we're interested in appointing Mr. Mills as economic development or the executive director of the CIC, make that appointment, then vote on officers, and then make additional appointments. And that way there's an additional vote there.
And I think it's important to note, in the past, there's also always been a community member that served on the board, and my recommendation would be if the two of you and Mr. Rajagopal would like to include an additional person or persons on the board of the CIC, that we go through the boards and commissions application process, which is what we use for all of our boards and commissions, and invite folks to apply, and then you guys would make the decision as to whether who's on the board.
I think that sounds good. I think at this point then, I would go ahead and ask for, and I'll just run a vote. I would ask for nominations for president of the Colerain Community Improvement Corporation, and I would need a second, so either one of us would need a second, so I will go ahead and nominate Matt Waller to be president of the Colerain Community Improvement Corporation. I would motion for that.
Okay, do I second myself?
I think you would have to.
That's, okay, I would second that.
And is there any other nominations for president? Meaning, do you want me to do it?
No,
Okay, well, I'm just trying to follow process.
I'm not going to give myself an opponent.
So I guess at that point, I would ask for a vote, and that would be followed by nominations for vice president. So I guess at that point, I would ask Mr. Mills to call the roll for votes for, does that sound right, Larry?
Yes.
If you'd call the vote to install Matt Waller as the president.
Very good. Mr. Unger
Aye.
and Mr. Waller.
All right.
Okay.
At this point, I guess I'll nominate Mr. Unger as Vice President.
And I will second that nomination. And I have no other nominations for Vice President.
All right. Would you like me to call the roll?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Unger
Aye.
and Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Very good.
At this point, I'd like to nominate Jeff Mills as Executive Director of the CIC.
I will second that. Is there any other nominations?
I have none.
You're running the meeting, so you would ask me.
Oh, okay. I didn't know, I didn't have the big chair. Are there any further nominations for Executive Director of the CIC?
Not from me.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Mr. Mills?
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye. That vote carries 2-0. Mr. Mills, now Executive Director of the CIC and now a voting member throughout the rest of the meeting, I would assume. Yeah.
Do you accept that position?
Yes, thanks. Thank you.
Okay. As we move on, I know that you had mentioned also the positions of, let me make sure I have it, treasurer and secretary.
Yes, sir.
In addition, community members. And I know from my perspective, I'm interested in community members being multiple. So first we'll tackle the treasurer. Are there any motions for treasurer of the CIC?
I nominate Jeff McElravy to be the treasurer of the CIC.
Any seconds on that motion?
I will second that motion.
Nominated by Mr. Mills, seconded by Mr. Unger. Any discussion for or against?
None from me.
Nope.
Seeing none, Mr. Mills will go ahead and move to roll call vote.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries.
Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to the secretary, any motions for secretary of the CIC?
I nominate Mr. Mike Iona to be the secretary of the CIC board and a member of the board of directors.
Motion by Mills, are there any seconds?
I will second Mike Iona.
Second by Mr. Unger. Any discussion for or against?
Not from me.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to roll call vote.
Very good. Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries.
All right, at this point, are there any, I guess we don't have any motions for community members because we need to go through the commission's application process. So at this point, I will make a motion to open up the commission's application process and post an announcement for interested members for the CIC. I know that I've already been contacted by 2 interested community members, and I'm sure that process will be clearly indicated, I guess, on the website for those.
Yes, sir.
And be part of, I guess, the newsletter that goes out.
Yep.
Okay. So I will make the motion to open up the commission's application process for 1 or more members of community members of the CIC. I would also ask, as part of that motion, that we have that as we consider it a geographical consideration based upon the neighborhoods of Colerain Township, so that when we're looking at those applications, I think that one issue might be to have a diversity of the geographical elements of the township.
Very good.
All right,
I will second that to get it to the floor for discussion.
all right, any discussion for or against?
I would just say, we'll have to determine what the interest level is and how many applications there are. And I guess at the next meeting, when Raj is here, we can decide how many it's gonna be.
Yeah, and I will add, that from my point of view, I think it would be counterproductive to add an actual number onto it, as you've kind of indicated. The level of interest and level of expertise and folks that can add to the board, and I think there, like I mentioned before, I think there needs to be a geographical element. There are certain parts of the community that feel that in some of our boards and things that may not have, it may feel a little bit silenced in representation, and I think that's important too. Any further discussion?
Not for me.
Seeing none at this point, Mr. Mills, call for a vote.
Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Administration will, as soon as possible, open up the commission's application process for community members of the CIC. For those watching at home and those in the crowd, please apply to this process. It's my goal to make this a much more interactive, exciting kind of CIC and hopefully get a lot of things done and offer a lot of perspectives. Okay, that said, we're going to move on to item C, Motion to accept financial reports from 2019. Mr. Mills, would you like to provide a description?
Yes, sir. I recommend approval of a motion to accept the financial reports from 2019. I'm really proud of this. I mean, we in the Colerain Township CIC publish every single transaction, both debit and credit, that the CIC engages in, because it is very important to us that we are fully transparent with the money that we have. So published in the agenda packet that was online is a register of activity, which details every revenue and every expense that was incurred by the CIC in 2019. And then you see bank reconciliation statements for each month from January of 2019 to December of 2019, and that just shows sort of monthly cash flow and aligning our book balance with our bank balance. To summarize all of that information, our total expenditures in 2019 were $492,905.21, and our total revenues were $531,2850. So the recommendation is to approve a motion to accept those reports.
I think you have to stand down on that, because you weren't here. I'll motion that we approve those reports.
Very good.
So I have I guess a point of procedure. Mr. Barberry and Mr. Unger indicated, since I was not here for that fiscal year, that I would be, I know for the minutes I wouldn't be voting, but does it matter for financial?
I think you can approve the report, having reviewed it, having studied it. You're in a position that if you want to approve you can abstain if you want, but I think you can vote if you want to.
And you're not, this is just to accept these reports, so it's not, you're not vouching for the accuracy of it. That's what we hire Plattenberg to do.
Second, so we can have this discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, so we need, you're right, we need to go to a second. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Now discussion, although that was a point of procedure, so.
Yeah, so the requested action is to accept the financial reports. This isn't attesting for their accuracy or anything else. It's just we've prepared these reports, and these are the transactions that we send to our CPA, who prepares the financial statements for the organization. So it's just accepting the financial reports rather than vouching for them.
No other discussion from me.
Mr. Mills, I noticed, looking at the minutes from October 8th, that one of the questions that came up in, I think there's been a couple transactions since then, are the Greater Cincinnati Waterworks bills, and I'm sure that would be a question if folks at home are looking at this packet. I think a lot of times people watch the meeting, then look at the packet and go back and look at the information. Perhaps you can give us some information on why we would be paying water bills, especially after a property transfer.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so one of the things that the CIC does is buys, holds, or sells real estate in an effort to advance economic development in the township. So in these instances, when you buy property, you're responsible for paying the utilities, and whether there's somebody running a bath or not, or running a shower, or using water or not, there are still fees associated with having a water meter at your location. So it's often referred to as carry costs. So when you own property, there is some carry that you have to keep in mind, and utilities are one of those. After a property transfers, there's often a settling up that occurs, and so that's why we pay utilities.
And the transfer, I know because I think I saw the check.
Yes.
It was one of the first things I saw when I came here. The transfer was completed.
Yep, and I'm going to give a detailed report on the Fireside transaction.
Okay, great.
Yep, which will include all those dates and amounts.
Any additional questions for Mr. Mills with regards to the financial reports from 2019?
And I would just add that when the Fireside issue came up, we talked about that in the property on Pippin Road, which was from the last session of the CIC. If you go to Cincinnati Waterworks website, you will see that to get a 3/4-inch water service hooked to a property is right around $4,000. So it devalues a property if we ask the Waterworks to cut off that service. So that's why there's a bill That's why there's a water bill, because if we cut off, that's just for a 3/4 inch service. If you go up to a 12-inch service, it's right around $1 million to have a 12-inch service off of a main. So that's why we keep water turned on at these properties, just because it's ridiculously expensive to have it hooked back up. So no other comments from me.
Seeing none, we'll call for roll call vote. Mr. Mills?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Seeing that motion passes 3-0, that motion carries to accept the financial reports from 2019. Moving on to item D, a discussion of the Fireside Hotel project. Mr. Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Waller. The Fireside and Duke Operations Center transaction was probably the greatest success of the last C.I.C. board. And I wanted to, with that transaction in the rearview mirror, I wanted to take the opportunity to give you a pretty detailed accounting of how that transaction occurred. And so, if you'll indulge me, on June 26th of 2018, the Board of Township Trustees approved resolutions 2918 and 3018 and 3118, which authorized the transfer of $530,000 to the Colerain Township Community Improvement Corporation. It authorized the Township Administrator to transfer the Community Resource Center property to the C.I.C., and it authorized the Township Administrator to execute a purchase, sale, and demolition agreement with Duke Energy of Ohio and the C.I.C. On the 26th of June in 2018, the Board of the C.I.C. accepted the $530,000 from the Township via Resolution 1-18, and that money was to be used for the acquisition and demolition of the Fireside Motel and the demolition of the Community Resource Center. The resolution stipulated that $400,000 of the $530,000 was to be considered a loan repayable by the CIC to the Board of Trustees. On that same day, via CIC Resolution 2-18, the CIC Board accepted the transfer of ownership from the Community Resource Center, of the Community Resource Center from the Board of Trustees. And in Resolution 3-18, the CIC Board authorized the Executive Director to execute a purchase, sale, and demolition agreement with Duke Energy of Ohio. This stipulated the terms of the real estate transactions and the demolition of the buildings. Fast forward to April 9th of 2019, the CIC Board ratified a fully executed agreement for the purchase, sale, and demolition of the Fireside Motel and Community Resource Center. The biggest change in the final agreement ratified on this date from the original agreement, authorized on June 26th of 18, was an increase in the purchase price of the properties by Duke Energy from the CIC by $30,000, from $400,000 to $430,000. This was to the benefit of the CIC. On July 19th, 2019, the CIC purchased the Fireside Motel with a mortgage provided by Duke Energy of Ohio for $430,000. No CIC funds were transferred to any other party in this transaction except for $3,513.94, which was paid to Sandra White, the operator of the Fireside Motel, for coverage of 2018 real estate taxes at closing. On August 27th, 2019, the CIC Board authorized the execution of a contract with Rock Solid Construction for the demolition of the Fireside Motel and Community Resource Center in an amount not to exceed $80,000. As part of the demolition process, an environmental assessment needed to be performed, and Rainbow Environmental was selected to perform the assessment and was paid $1,250 for the service. The assessment that they performed resulted in the need for environmental abatement because they found asbestos. They performed the abatement for $3,995. On November 26th of last year, the demolition was completed at a cost of $80,000, which we paid in 2 draws. On December 18th of last year, the deed on the Fireside and the CRC properties, the Community Resource Center properties, were transferred from Colerain Township C.I.C. to Duke Energy, and the $430,000 mortgage was extinguished. While the CIC owned the property, as we just talked about, it was responsible for the payment of utility costs. We paid $1,183.04 to Greater Cincinnati Waterworks between September 5th and December 3rd. There may be one last bill following the closing, and so because you have to settle up, as we just discussed. On December 18th, the CIC wrote a check to the Colerain Township trustees in the amount of $400,000 in fulfillment of its obligation under CIC Resolution 1-18 and Colerain Township Trustee Resolution 31-18. So to summarize all of that, the project was budgeted at $530,000. $430,000 for the acquisition of property and $100,000 for the demolition of the property. These expenses were thought to be offset by the sale of the properties to Duke for $400,000. The net budgetary impact to the township, it was going to cost the township $130,000 to execute all of this, to eliminate the blight at Fireside and to support the growth and investment of $19 million and the creation of 100 jobs at Duke. In practice, we were able to acquire the property for $430,000 plus the closing costs assigned of $3,500-ish payable to Sandra White. We spent $80,000 on the demolition, $5,200-ish on environmental assessment and abatement, and about $1,200 on utilities during the carry period. This sums to almost $520,000 of expense, or $10,000 under budget. On the revenue side, we were able to sell the property for more than we expected, $430,000 rather than $400,000. So the actual net budgetary impact to the township was $89,941.98, which is $40,000 less than we originally expected. So we were able to execute this project and save the township $40,000 over what we went into it with. Now, what that means is we've transferred the $400,000 to the township trustees, and the question that this board will have to figure out, not tonight, but at some point, is what do we want to do with that balance? We could, the C.I.C. could transfer the $40,000 net that we saved.
40.
Yeah, back to the township, or you could keep it, the C.I.C. could keep it and use it for economic development, and that's completely at the discretion of the board. So that is a summary of a lot of work, but what amounted to a fantastic project in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Any questions?
I drive past there daily, and the progress is really coming right along, and it'll be really great to have the facility open sometime.
Yes. May.
soon.
Yep,
And it's a fantastic win for the township, so.
I agree.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report given on the Fireside Hotel project.
I move that we would accept Mr. Mills's report.
And I will second. Mr. Mills, roll call vote.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Wallert?
Aye.
I vote aye.
All right, that motion passes 3-0 to accept the discussion of the report of the Fireside Hotel project. Item E, motion to set 2020 C.I.C. meeting schedule. Mr. Mills.
Very good. So typically in the past, the C.I.C. has had 4 quarterly meetings, the first being the annual meeting and the organizational meeting, which is what we're engaged in right now, and then 3 other regularly scheduled meetings as the year progresses. In practice, there's often times when development and projects dictate that a special meeting is in order, and so from time to time the board will meet in special session. So my recommendation is to adopt a motion to set the regular meeting schedule as noted in the agenda packet.
Are there any motions to that effect?
I would move that we accept that schedule.
Motion by Unger, and I will second by Waller to set the 2020 CIC meeting schedule, regular meeting schedule, to set that calendar. Any discussion for or against? I will just point out that it's my goal that this will be the regular schedule, but that there'll be additional meetings that we can go back as we kind of look at the organizational structure of this, while still meeting with the appropriate ORC announcements, so that we make sure that everybody is well notified on that. I think quarterly is at bare minimum, but I think we probably end up necessarily meeting more if we want to actually roll up our sleeves and get things done. So that would be my comment. Any other comments regarding the 2020 schedule?
No.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to roll call vote. Mr. Mills?
Mr. Unger?
Mr. Unger says aye.
Very good. Mr. Waller?
Aye.
I vote aye.
That motion carries 3-0 for the regularly scheduled meetings of 2020 for CIC meeting schedule. At this point, we move on to number 3, approval of minutes. Approval of minutes from October 8th, 2019. Are there any motions with regard to the approval of minutes?
I would motion that we approve the minutes from October 8th, 2019.
I second.
Motion by Unger, seconded by Mills to approve the minutes from October 8th, 2019. Discussion for or against?
No, nothing from me.
I will point out I would be abstaining from this. I was not in physical attendance at the meeting. That said, Mr. Mills, roll call vote.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye. Abstain, sorry.
Very good. And I vote aye.
All right, that motion passes 2-0-1, I guess,
Yeah.
theoretically. So those minutes are approved. Are there any motions, but before adjournment, I just want to point out for those watching, please apply for the commission's application process will be up. And we are looking to expand the CIC and have interested parties apply. So please email me, call me, or whatever if you're interested, and I can follow you through. And I know that Mr. Unger will also give out his cell phone.
513-404-3057.
Again, we want as much community involvement as possible. That said, are there any other issues?
So to review, we have appointed you, we've appointed Mr. McElvey, we've appointed Mike Iona.
Yep.
And was that the number of?
Yes, so currently the board stands at 6 members, and then others are encouraged to apply on our website or through the boards and commissions application process, and then.
So we have Jeff McElvey and
Yep.
Mike Iona, and the 3 of us, and Raj, 6. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And before we move on to any motions, I will also point out that I had discussion to talk, I think he's on the job now 3 days. We have a new chamber president, Colerain Township Chamber president, who is making his way down from northern Illinois somewhere as we speak. So, Mr.
Morovic?
Morovic,
Yep.
yeah. So you will hear his name as well, and hopefully he will be involved with this additionally. All right, any motions?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Any discussion for or against?
None.
Seeing none, call for roll call vote. Mr. Mills?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Mr. Mills? Aye.
Motion carries, motion adjourned.